Hi, I hope you're having a wonderful Friday night. I get through the basic stuff right now. You could support this channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. You could subscribe to the newsletter at friendlyatheist.com. I appreciate you doing that. Thanks for joining me. Dan is here and he's moderating comments. So if you leave any questions or anything I need to see, he will let me know in between stories. And hopefully there's tons of questions as we go through stuff. I'm going to go ahead and get started because I know the first couple stories I have are going to take like 90% of the time. But one of them, okay, I love it when people send me links to stories they want me to check out. And I saw one where I'm like, that looks interesting. I don't know that it's going to take me that long. I don't know if it's worth writing about or anything like that. And then I started looking at it. And then I went down this multi-hour rabbit hole that took up the better part of a day. And that's the story I want to tell you about here, because the headline you may have seen already is that in Kansas, a group of Satanists are planning to hold a black mass later this month. And some people are freaking out about it. And the reason I didn't think this was that big of a deal is because, okay, Satanists are holding some event at the state capitol. Yeah, the usual conservative Christians are going to be like, oh, no, this is the end of the universe. And normal people are not going to think anything of it. And that will be the end of it. I didn't think it was a big deal. And then you realize what they're trying to do and what the backlash is and how insane this is all getting. So bear with me. I'm going to try to walk you through what I went through and try to get through this story. So let's start with who's doing this. The group that's doing this is a group called the Satanic Grotto. And this is their website right here. They're not affiliated with the Satanic Temple. They're not affiliated with the Church of Satan. It's just an independent group. And, oh, look at that lovely, darkly tinged field of sunflowers or whatever. Okay, whatever. It's some group putting together this event. Now, what is a black mass? If you're not familiar with it, a black mass is kind of like an inverted version of a Catholic mass. There's no guidebook, so depending on where you might see one of these, they're all done differently. But in general, there might be music, there might be chanting, there might be a sermon, maybe the desecration of religious symbols instead of worshiping them or something like that. But more than anything, it's a private group doing their own rituals. Who cares? They're not hurting anybody. It's no different from Christians who take up space in a state capitol because they feel like praying, right? And if you don't like it, well, guess what? This wasn't for you, so it doesn't matter. So in particular, what this group was advertising, this is the invite they put on Facebook a couple weeks ago. And you could see everything here. It says the Satanic Grotto presents Black Mass at the Kansas Capitol. It's an expression of blasphemy and a dedication to Satan. And when is this happening? March 28th, like literally next Friday, as I'm making this, in the afternoon in Topeka, in the first floor rotunda. Like, they actually got the permit from the state capitol people to hold their event inside the state capitol. Very interesting. So this is the event that is being planned for next Friday. They announced this a few weeks ago. And on their website, on the Facebook page for this, they said, we plan to dedicate the grounds and our legislature to the glory of Satan. And if you think that's funny, well, guess what? Christians do that all the time. They'll go to the Capitol and say, we celebrate this entire building. It's for Jesus now. So that's the idea. That's what they were going to do. Now, I had not heard about anyone performing a black mass for like years now. There were a couple of them that happened like a decade ago. There was one in Oklahoma City in 2014. That one attracted like hundreds of protesters. There was one at Harvard University in 2014, and there was so much backlash to the idea of that one, it had to be moved off campus after social pressure. In 2020, Catholic leaders went ballistic after hearing about a different black mass for reasons I'm actually going to get into in a little bit. But in any case, like, it feels like people are just mad because they hear the word Satan and then they flip out, which is weird because Satanists, the kind we're talking about, they don't believe in Satan. It's the Christians who believe in this stuff. Anyway, so it's honestly bizarre to me that all these people are threatened by the idea of a black mass, because if they were actually doing an inversion of a Catholic mass, like, that sounds family friendly at this point. You should want to bring your kids to the black mass. It's probably safer for them. But again, nobody handled this thing responsibly. So earlier this month, for example, let me share this with you. The Catholic Church, the Kansas Catholic Conference, issued this statement that they're aware of a sacrilegious event scheduled to take place later this month in the state capitol. If true, this explicit demonstration of anti-Catholic bigotry will be an insult to not only Catholics, but all people of goodwill. Spiritual and legal responses are being explored. What do you think you're going to do? Pray them away? I like how they do, like, hey, we're going to have fake responses and actual ones that matter that are being explored. Anyway, the Catholic bishops of Kansas asked that people pray for the conversion of those taking part in this event. I'm sure that'll go over great, as well as each person's own conversion of heart. For what, by the way? What is it that you're afraid they're going to do? These are Satanists. These are people who believe in, like, nonviolence and peace. What is it that you're trying to convert them to, right? Anyway, the Kansas Catholic Conference I don't like the sound of that alliteration, by the way, will continue to update the faithful as the situation unfolds. That's from Chuck Weber of the Kansas Catholic Conference. Remember that name. He'll come up again in a second. So already the Catholic Church is like, what? These people are holding an inverted Catholic Mass? Well, that must be against us specifically. And so we oppose this. And it's blasphemy, and these people hate us. They weren't alone. There's actually a right-wing group, like, to the right of the Catholic Church, called the American Society for the Defense of Tradition, Family, and Property. Very clunky name. If you've ever seen them in the news, it's because whenever they do something, all the members wear these cultish red cloaks around them, which just makes them look creepy as hell. But they said they're going to hold a rally of reparation outside the Kansas state capitol during the Black Mass. All right, man. I mean, it's a public space. You can do whatever you want. And then they issued this online petition I want to show you. Sign this petition against the satanic Black Mass at the Kansas state capitol. You could see right above my head here, they already have over 40,000 supporters. And again, none of that means anything. It's an online petition. Who cares? But it's not nothing. So they got people all worked up over this thing they don't understand. And then things took a drastic turn for the worse, because now you have the Catholic Church getting upset about this. Now you have the, pseudo-Catholic Church that's more right-wing getting upset about this. The governor of Kansas, Laura Kelly, is a Democrat, but she's also a Democrat who runs Kansas. So she's like, oh no, I got to do something about this. So then she issues a statement about a week ago about this event. And you could see here, let's go through this. Governor Laura Kelly released Wednesday the below statement regarding the Black Mass. I have been informed about concerns regarding an event at the State House on March 28th, and I share those concerns. There are more constructive ways to protest and express disagreements without insulting or denigrating sacred religious symbols. Oh, please, whatever. However, as governor, I also have to protect the First Amendment, that pesky First Amendment, regardless of how offensive or distasteful I might find the content. And then look at what she does, because it's not all talk. Therefore, all events planned for March 28th will be moved outdoors to the grounds surrounding the State House. Again, no protests allowed inside the State House, on March 28th. And that's a clever way to say, hey, I'm not allowing any groups inside the Capitol on this day. You have to go outside. Also, the only people who are going to hold a protest in the building that day were the Satanists. So it's a way to say no Satanists allowed in the Capitol without actually calling out the Satanists, because that would be like discrimination and a violation of the First Amendment rights. No, this is a blanket ban on everybody for just a little bit. That's the Democratic governor of Kansas caving in to the right-wing loons. And the reason she was saying that she was doing all this is because the Satanists said they plan to desecrate some religious symbols. Like, it's a freedom of speech thing. They have some things they want to destroy. Catholics are like, but that stuff is holy to us. That's fine. We're not going into church and destroying your stuff. This is our stuff, and we're destroying it. And Laura Kelly's like, oh, no, that's anti-Catholic too. And here's the thing. That half-assed response saying, I don't like what they're doing, but they do have a First Amendment right to it, but also they're not allowed inside the building, and are you all happy yet? It didn't make anybody happy. The Catholic Church responded to her statement by saying, basically, we're not happy about this. Remember Chuck Weber, who wrote that first thing? Here we go. Chuck Weber, executive director of the Kansas Catholic Conference, was unimpressed with Kelly's response, telling Catholic News Agency in a statement that her message reeks of condescension and a willful ignorance about what is scheduled to happen. Make no mistake, a vile and despicable satanic worship ritual has been approved to take place on the grounds of the Kansas State Capitol, the People's House. Moving it from the living room to the front porch changes nothing. Where is the condemnation of this provocative expression of hatred and anti-Catholic bigotry? To which I just say, this dude and all these Catholic bishops are so much more angry at the Satanists holding their own protest than you will ever see them get when Catholic priests are accused of molesting children. So their priorities are completely out of whack here, right? So then the Catholic Church is thinking, well, we had our say, we said we don't like this, but that's not enough. What can we do to really stop the Black Mass? So then they went friggin' nuclear, okay? Here's what happened next. The Archbishop of Kansas City, check this out. The Archbishop of Kansas City, his name is Joseph Naumann. He filed a complaint in court. In a 44-page complaint filed Friday in Leavenworth County District Court, blah, 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 the Archbishop alleged that members of the Satanic Grotto, including the group's leader, whose name is Michael Stewart, and the Grotto's vice president, stole consecrated hosts to use during the Black Mass. The allegation is based on phone conversations and posts on Reddit linked to Stewart's username, which has 666 in it. So let's just, if you're not familiar with what's going on here, the Satanists apparently said, we have some consecrated communion wafers, which is Catholic code for regular ass wafers that they said some magic words to, and which Catholics believe now contain the body of Christ. Literally so. And the Satanists are like, we got our hands on some of those Jesus crackers, and we're going to do some shit to them. And the Catholic Church is going to court saying they stole Jesus and we want him back. That's not me exaggerating what is happening. That is what they went to court to do that. And they're basing this on things the head of the Satanic Grotto said on Reddit. So you know I had to go look up, what the hell did this dude say on Reddit? And lucky for me, I got a hold of that lawsuit, and they actually have screenshots of what this dude said on Reddit. Here's one, and this is a screenshot in the lawsuit. Check this out. Hey, I saw your post on the Kansas subreddit thinking about making the trip, but I had a quick question. I know there's a lot of different takes on black masses. What can I expect to see at this one? To which Michael Stewart responds, by the way, Michael Stewart, just a boring ass satanic name. Like that's the least scary name you could imagine. But good for you for having a good Reddit username. So what does he say is going to happen at the Black Mass? This one will be something special, I think. With certain limitations based on the location, we plan to lean into expressing our own personal emotions combined with some standard Black Mass imagery. All of this is a nothing burger so far. Bleeding Kansas outrage meets, I don't know what that is. But then we've already secured a consecrated host. Any specifics you'd like to know? And that's the part that ended up in the lawsuit, because the Satanist is saying, we already got some of those Jesus wafers. And that's not all. Later in the lawsuit, they pointed to a different thing he said also on Reddit. Let me see if I could pull this one up. Here we go. Yeah, here's the other one they posted on Reddit. Where he just said, we already have the consecrated host, wine too. So they got this stuff somehow. And what the Catholic Church is alleging is that the only way you could have gotten a consecrated host is by going to church and at the end of Mass coming up for communion and a priest placed it on your mouth. And maybe you went like, huh, and then walked out and you never swallowed it. Is that theft if they did that? No, I would say the Catholic Church gave you something for free and then you walked out with it and it's not their property anymore. So that's one possibility. Another possibility is someone else did that and then handed the wafers to the Satanists. But there are also other possibilities. It turns out there's a lot of ways you could get a consecrated host for communion. And the thing is, the difference between an unconsecrated wafer and a consecrated wafer is nothing. They are identical. You would never know whether one is consecrated. I mean, there's nothing stopping the Satanists from saying, all right, we'll give you back the consecrated wafers, and they just hand back like a Ziploc bag full of wafers. And then what's the church supposed to say about that? Like, thanks? And then the Satanists go back and say, haha, we gave them a dupe. We have the real Jesus hidden in the closet somewhere. It's all of this is a fight over nothing. Anyway, there's no evidence, to be clear. There's no evidence. There's no videotape, nothing, that Satanists went to a Catholic church and stole any of this stuff. I want to make that clear. No evidence of this. The only evidence they have is that the Satanists said on Reddit, we have the consecrated hosts and wine. They said they had it, so the church is saying, hey, judge, get that stuff back for us. Unbelievable. I should also tell you, for the sake of just transparency here, I actually found one of the comments they shared in the lawsuit on Reddit, and this is what it says in the wild. Are you actually going to desecrate a host? Like, are you going to smash the communion wafer that you say is the body of Christ? And he says, oh, yes, we will actually use its desecration to manifest the link between Satan and the Capitol building. We will also destroy a Bible and tear Christ off a crucifix before smashing it. Now, would you say that is distasteful? Maybe. It's in the eye of the beholder. I mean, those aren't my religious symbols. But the thing is, this is no different than someone saying, I'm going to like burn the American flag that I own. I know it offends a lot of people, but if it's your property and you damage it, that is legal. And our First Amendment protects your right to distasteful speech. So if someone wants to burn their own American flag, they have a right to do that. And if this dude, this Satanist, if he owns the Bible and he owns a crucifix and he has a consecrated communion wafer and he wants to destroy all of them, he has every right to do that. That is not anti-Catholic. That's just a symbol of protest. Like if he went to the Tesla dealership and set Teslas on fire, that would be a crime. If he bought a Tesla and then decided to destroy it as an act of protest against Elon Musk, that's not a crime. Do you get what I'm saying here? So I don't know what they're going to court for. Just because they don't like someone else's protected speech makes no sense. And at the very end of the lawsuit, the Archbishop says this. Like, what is he actually asking the court to do? And check this out. Archbishop Naumann hereby petitions this court for an order requiring that any and all consecrated hosts and any amount of consecrated wine in the possession, custody, or control of the Satanists be recovered so that Archbishop Naumann may claim immediate possession thereof. And that is all fancy legal speak for I need my wafers and wine back because there are parts of Jesus inside of those things. And I don't care that it's imaginary and in my head. I need them back because that is what I believe. Like, it's seriously that ridiculous. Not only ridiculous because they could hand you back anything and this dude would have to believe it because he would never know, but also ridiculous because you're going to court to recover stuff that you give away every day for free during Mass. I don't know. It is weird. Okay, stick a pin in all that. I'm going to jump ahead for a second here because last weekend there was another twist in all of this. Because guess what happened in Kansas City? It turns out a Catholic church in Wichita was vandalized, which is awful. I don't condone any of that. But they took pictures of the scene and they said, after forcing their way inside, statues were destroyed, glass smashed, and other extensive damage exacted upon this sacred space. And then look at this at the very end. A satanic website was scrawled on a wall. Like the vandal or vandals graffitied a satanic website on the wall. This is the face of evil. This is the same type of group that'll be holding a satanic worship ritual on the grounds of the Capitol on March 28th. And you could see from the pictures, like, this is vandalism. This is awful. I'm not condoning any of this. I'm sorry they had to deal with that. That is bad. But also, there is no picture of what that URL was. There is no evidence that whoever committed that crime was linked to the Satanic Grotto at all. But they just went ahead and said, hey, something bad happened to us, and we're going to link it to the people holding this peaceful protest. That is as awful as saying there's a bunch of peaceful Muslims out there and also some religious extremists who do horrible things, and they're all kind of the same. Like, that is lazy and offensive, and this Catholic Church is doing all of those things. But that is what they said. It's just full of ignorance, and I'll come back to that story as well. And the reason I have to come back to these is because there's more. Because now we have the governor getting involved. You have the Catholic Church filing a lawsuit. So they're getting involved. Like, the courts are now involved in this. So then you have Republican legislators. And you know they want their piece of anything that involves Jesus in politics. So what do? They put together a House resolution. And look at how many people are sponsors on this thing. It's so close, by the way, to being House Resolution like 666, or at least having 3 6s in it. That would have been a nice touch. But look at all these people, and what are they saying? A resolution denouncing the planned satanic worship ritual, the so-called Black Mass. And okay, a lot of whereases. The one I want to call your attention to, look at line 5. So why are we doing this? Because the United States of America is one nation under God, founded upon principles that recognize the importance of faith, morality, and the common good. Like, no, we're not one nation under God. No, we were not founded on the importance of faith and morality. They also say, line 13, the planned satanic worship ritual is an explicit act of anti-Catholic bigotry. No, it's not, dude. It's First Amendment stuff. And look what they say then. Be it resolved, we denounce the worship, blah, 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 as a despicable, blasphemous and offensive sacrilege to not only Catholics, but all people of goodwill. And it runs contrary to the spiritual heritage of this state and nation. They make it sound like the only people who could be for this protest are the Satanists doing it, and everyone else is universally against it because we're all spiritual. What? No. And then they say we call upon all Kansans to promote unity, mutual respect, and the values that uphold our identity as one nation under God, which we are not. And that's ridiculous, because if there's one thing we know about Kansas, it's that the conservative Christians who run the legislature are never promoting unity. That's as dumb as saying Donald Trump promotes unity. He does not. He is all about division. And then they want the governor to condemn the protest and its implicit use of stolen property. And they have to say implicit because there's no explicit evidence that anything was stolen. So these idiots decided to pass a resolution condemning all this. Okay. So how are the Satanists reacting to all of this, right? Because there's a lot going on here. Well, on one thing is they planned to resist the protests that are happening against them by staging their own counter-protest. They're going to show up outside the Capitol, because they're not allowed to go in, next Friday, and they plan to protest the protesters who are protesting them. Are you with me here? And then after that, according to their Facebook post about this, they also said, after we've protested, we're going to walk into the Capitol. Even though Laura Kelly said we cannot do that. So we're going to risk breaking the rules because that is a public space and we reserve that space. And you have no right to say we can't be in here just because you don't like what we're saying. So we are going to go inside the Capitol. And if they arrest us, so be it. That is good trouble right there. This is what they posted on Facebook with a disclaimer here. Like, as many of you are aware, Governor Kelly has ordered us outside and tried to hide our platform under the weight of the Catholic Church. We will not let this stand unanswered. So they are expecting to protest the Catholics. And then look at number 2. Grotto President Michael Stewart will make good on our ultimatum to the governor and enter the building on Friday. Some members have said they will enter, but the Grotto does not encourage anyone to follow us unless you know this. We are committing a peaceful act of civil disobedience. This is an illegal act because the governor said we can't go in there. We are thumbing our noses at the highest authority in our state, and you do so at your own risk. So their plan right now is to enter the building anyway, and if they get arrested, they are proving their point because they shouldn't be arrested for this thing. But to be clear, this is still going to be a peaceful protest and a peaceful counter-protest. So that's one thing the Satanists are doing. They also, by the way, posted something else that said to Governor Kelly, you will have to have us arrested to stop us from practicing our free speech and religious rights. Shame on you, Governor Kelly. Beyond that, they also released a schedule for what they plan to do. And I enjoyed reading through this here. So this is on Facebook. They posted a full schedule of events and minus the spelling errors. And there are many. Look at the black mass components on the left side of your screen here. We have the opening. We have the denunciation of the word, denunciation of Christ, desecration of the Eucharist, corruption of the blood. I don't even know what that one means. And then a closing. So they're putting it out there. This is what we're going to do. And it's at this point, they're just going for the shock value here, right? But whatever. The legislators who were like, wait, we passed a resolution against you. We thought you were going to go away then, and you have not. They decided to hold a big meeting about this recently. So the Republican Senate president, he literally asked the Attorney General, Chris Kobach, who you might remember from the first Trump presidency for being like a MAGA cultist. They asked Chris Kobach, hey, how do we basically stop this protest from happening? And Chris Kobach basically said to them, look, there are 2 ways we could say they committed a crime. One is they say they have consecrated communion wafers, And if they stole those wafers and the wine through theft or deception, that might be a crime. And also, if they destroy those things, if they destroy what is allegedly stolen property, that is also a crime. So you guys, we might be able to go after them for 2 possible crimes, is what Chris Kobach told the Republicans, even though there is no evidence anything was stolen from anywhere. They're literally going off of Reddit posts at this point. And then the lawmakers also said, maybe we can get the Kansas Highway Patrol to stop the Black Mass. These people are overreacting to a peaceful protest just because they don't like what is being said. It is ridiculous. They also did something else. They decided to change the policy for who can go on Capitol grounds. And this is what they now say. The policy changes add 3 contingencies to the public's use of common areas in the State House and Capitol. And I just want to point you to the very last one here. People cannot gather if a group or member of a group has stated explicitly that the meeting or gathering will involve a violation of law. And they think by changing these rules, we are banning the Satanists from entering the building or ever holding any sort of event at the state capitol because they said explicitly on Reddit they have stolen property, the consecrated communion wafers. And that would be a crime if you stole something from someone else and you said you were going to destroy it, except, again, there is no evidence that anything was stolen. This story just gets crazier and crazier. None of these people have anything better to do with their time. The funniest thing about that article I just referenced is that they got in touch with Michael Stewart, the Satanist, and they were like, so where did you get these wafers from? And guess what he said to them? Here's what he said. In an interview Tuesday, Stewart denied the allegations and added that no one asked what consecration means to him. I find it very entertaining that he is convinced that the Archbishop, I find it very entertaining that he is convinced that I have Jesus trapped in a cracker and he would take it to court, which is amusing, but it doesn't answer the question really of where did you get this shit from, right? Anyway, here's my favorite part of this story. I had so many questions about all of this. Do you understand? People sent me a link to the story. I read the headline, oh, Satanists doing a protest at the Capitol. And I thought, I've seen this before. It's not a big deal. And then I went down that rabbit hole of everything I just told you. And I'm like, what the hell? This is such an overreaction. All of this is insane. I have to talk to Michael Stewart. I have to talk to the Satanist at the center of all this because I have so many things I want to know. And by the way, if you haven't seen this dude, I got to show you. This is Michael Stewart, the guy, the Satanist with the least threatening name, but the most threatening face. This dude's got some face tattoos. And I'm like, I got to talk to this guy. So this week, I got on the phone with Michael Stewart and I got to ask him the biggest questions in my head after reading all of these stories, okay? And I hope the questions I was asking are the questions you have been asking as you're listening to this, right? So the first question I had to know, where did you get the wafers from? You say you have consecrated communion wafers. Where did they come from? Did you go to church and put them in your mouth and then exit the place? Did some minion of yours go to church and steal the communion wafers by putting them in the mouth and then walking out of there? Maybe they did their magic words over the communion wafers and you snuck in behind the back and stole the bowl. Like, where did you get them from? And it turns out the true story is way less entertaining than I thought it would, but definitely funnier. Michael Stewart shared with me the actual receipt because he bought them on Amazon. He bought 300 communion wafers on Amazon. That is all. That's where he got them from. Now, the thing is, he said he had consecrated communion wafers. And for the Catholic Church, they're only consecrated if they come from like the consecrated part of France. You know what I mean? Like if a priest doesn't say the magic words, they're not magic wafers. So how can they be consecrated? And the thing is, why are we playing by Catholic rules? Michael told me he consecrated them himself using his definition of the word consecrated. Is it official? Well, it's no different than when priests do it. So they are consecrated, but they're consecrated in his mind. They're not consecrated according to the terminology of the Catholic Church and the way the church would use it. So he does have wafers. They are consecrated. He has wine. It's also consecrated, but none of it came from a Catholic church. And right there, why are we doing a lawsuit? What is the resolution about? Why did Chris Kobach say these people might have committed a crime? All of those people built everything because they didn't know this dude got his communion wafers from Amazon. It's the dumbest Republicans in Kansas. Seriously. By the way, I talked to Michael Stewart and learned all this the day before he was scheduled to appear in court to defend his alleged theft. Okay, second question I had for him. There was a church that was vandalized, right? We saw the pictures. There was a satanic URL written on the wall. Was that you guys? And Michael told me, no. He did say we do have a second affiliate in Wichita where that church is located, but he contacted them immediately after he heard this story, basically to say, please tell me none of you people did this. And they got back to him and they said, no, none of us had anything to do with this. Michael actually joked with me, everyone's in their 30s and 40s and doesn't have the time to vandalize a church, right? None of their people did any of this. But then that raises the question, what was the URL that was left on the wall? No one knows. And who did it then? And it turns out we do know who did it. Because the day after that vandalism happened, the Wichita Police Department shared this on Facebook. This is the day after it happened. Wichita police arrest suspect in burglary and vandalism of the church. And without reading all of this, basically, it's some 23-year-old guy who just got out of prison a week ago. And why was he in prison? For vandalism. And I don't know why he wrote a satanic URL on the wall. It may have just been to throw everyone off the scent. But it had nothing to do with the satanic group. And at that point, you would think, okay, well, maybe the Catholic Church, at least they apologized, right? At least they told their people on Facebook, listen, we insinuated that this had something to do with the people protesting and doing the Black Mass, but it totally did not. Sorry, our bad. Nope. They didn't do that either. Instead, let me show you the two things the Kansas Catholic Conference posted. This is the first thing they posted, which I've already shown you about the vandalism. And then the next post on Facebook that they did the next day. So chronologically, it's the one above this. Here it is. An update. And it's a link to an article, like a local news article, that basically says they arrested the dude. And that's it. The dude had nothing to do with the Satanists. The Kansas Catholic Conference doesn't have the maturity to admit they made a mistake. They just said, they caught the guy. Anyway, let's move on. Just the worst people. But I am glad to hear it had nothing to do with the Satanists. And then the last question I had for Michael Stewart is, and this actually, I forgot about this question as we were going through all this. Why are you even holding a Black Mass? Like, is there a reason you were even doing this in the first place? Like, we've been focusing on the reaction to the Black Mass, but why are you doing this in the first place? Why are you desecrating a consecrated communion wafer? Why are you going to tear up a Bible or whatever it is you're going to do? And this is where his answer got really interesting and honest. He basically said to me that, and I'm paraphrasing here, I'm not quoting him directly, he's been to the state capitol a number of times. And many times that he's gone there, he has seen anti-abortion protesters in the Capitol, and they're doing their protests there. And they have a permit to do it. And the reason they're in the Capitol is because they want to hold up signs that are anti-abortion. They want to hold up pictures of like fetuses that have been bloodied up, whatever disgusting, disturbing picture to exaggerate how abortion actually works. That's what these people are doing in the Capitol. And Michael Stewart said he walks past that, he sees that, and he realized, oh, these people are protesting, but they're not interested in trying to change the minds of all the people in Kansas. They're trying to change the minds of the lawmakers who walk through that building. We should do that. And that's why he applied to hold a protest inside the Capitol. He was inspired by the anti-abortion protesters, and he was thinking, you know, their posters disgust me. I don't like looking at them. They make me uncomfortable, not for the ways they intend. It's uncomfortable because it just makes them cringe. But he said, why don't Satanists host a protest inside the Capitol and make everyone else uncomfortable so we can prove a point that religious symbols should not have this kind of sway over you, right? He also pointed out that the Black Mass, to anyone who's just saying it sounds like a silly publicity stunt just for shock value, he said it actually has it's a very legitimate ritual for the people in his group. He told me it's a way to work through their own traumas, because a lot of members of his group and other satanic groups, these are people who have been hurt by Christianity. Christianity has been used as a weapon against them their entire life. Maybe they are queer. Maybe they are women. Maybe they've been subjugated because of some pastor's interpretation of what the Bible says. So desecrating a wafer, tearing up a page from the Bible, it shows that this book doesn't have power over me, right? It's cathartic in a way. He also said the blasphemy was important for that same reason, to show that this wafer, this book, doesn't have any power over me. He also said that there was going to be a sermon of sorts during their event, and that sermon was going to explain in detail how Christianity has let them down and hurt them. He actually said all of this in a piece for the Kansas City Star, and this is behind a paywall, but you can see this right here. Michael Stewart wrote an opinion piece for the Kansas City Star. We Satanists have every right to use the Kansas Capitol, just like Catholic protesters. And I just want to read to you a couple of things he pointed out here. Our event, the Black Mass, is a cathartic expression of sorrow, rage, and healing. Our cries are for autonomy, not to impose our will on others. This is a perfect moment for it. At a time when a majority in this country think the founders intended this to be a Christian nation, when it is becoming unsafe to have alternative viewpoints and separation of church and state has eroded. Now, more than ever, we should be challenging what is considered normal and protecting those that are different. Love it. And then he adds later on in this piece. Here we go. So to the Archdiocese and our fine Kansas legislature, we thank you. Your actions have highlighted the religious hypocrisy rampant in our state government, as well as the unconstitutional treatment of differing religions and beliefs. He also says, if the Catholics can do this to Satanists now, what is going to stop them from targeting Protestants or Baptists next? We are nonviolent. We intend no harm. We value the grounds, building, and every being inside of it. On March 28th, we will enter the Kansas Capitol and perform the Black Mass according to our original permit. We acknowledge it violates the new permit, and there might be consequences. Nothing bad will happen. And when we leave, or at least that's what I hope will happen. Like, beautifully put, man. It's well said. And honestly, when he puts it that way, you have to come to the conclusion that the way Kansas officials, Catholic church leaders, Republican politicians, the Democratic governor, the way they are trampling over the First Amendment is so much worse than whatever these people all think the Satanists plan to do to a wafer. So maybe he'll get arrested. I don't know. But given everything that's happening in this country and the assault on the First Amendment and the Constitution from the highest levels of government these days, what Michael Stewart told me is that maybe some of us need to risk getting arrested right now. And by the way, he did go to court the day after I talked to him, and he said the judge dismissed the Archbishop's lawsuit without prejudice. Like, it was tossed out because there's no evidence he stole anything. And by the way, we have the receipt from Amazon. He actually told me he would, if the Archbishop had just asked him, where'd you get the consecrated wafers from? He would have told him, but the Archbishop was not interested in the answer. He was only interested in making some stupid statement. That's me talking, not him. And when I asked him where he got it from, he's like implying, I've been trying to tell people where it came from for days and no one was interested. So how's that for a story? Happy to take your questions. Is it common for religious groups to hold events inside state houses? Real question. Yes, it is very common, especially if it's like the pro-life days or if it's the holiday season. You will see religious groups sign up to be inside the Capitol. Maybe they're doing a religious thing like reading the Bible. Maybe they're holding up anti-abortion signs. Maybe they're putting up a nativity scene. And they do this all the time. And guess what? Totally fine. It's totally legal. It's only ever a problem, it seems, when an atheist group or a non-Christian group says, oh, we would also like to do that, and we want to put up our display in the state capitol. And then everyone freaks out and they're like, oh, we didn't know the First Amendment also applied to you. And then like in Texas, for example, years ago, the governor of Texas threw out the atheist display and then lost a lawsuit over that. Like, so yes, it's a very common thing that groups do, and it is legal as long as you're following the rules of the Capitol. I'm surprised they actually got the permits. I will tell you, I am not, because they did the work, they did the paperwork, and they were not there to create a disturbance. And so they're allowed to do it. Like, there was no reason the permit should ever have not been granted to them. I'm beginning to think the Catholics and other religious fundies just hate the First Amendment. No, see, they absolutely love it as long as it only applies to them. When other people want to exercise their rights, and this is true of the whole Constitution, when other groups want to exercise their rights, Republicans hate it. It's like they know just praying won't do the job. That's right. That's why they got to go to court to get their imaginary friends back. Yeah, whenever they want to actually get shit done, they never just pray. Prayer is something you only do when kids are shot up in a school. But if Catholics and conservative Christians actually want to get stuff done, they know damn well prayer is not going to be enough. So a Catholic church is upset because these Satanists spat instead of swallowing. Well played. You're forgetting, Hemant, that anything the church doesn't like is anti-Catholic bias, like Satanists or gay people existing. Yes, you are absolutely right. And with some of these people, it's like the Catholic League, independent nonprofit group. They just say, oh, this person had a religious allusion in their music video Sabrina Carpenter was inside a Catholic church singing for a music video. Therefore, she hates Catholics or she's doing something against them. Like, yes, this is their playbook. If you're not explicitly endorsing their religious beliefs, some of these people think you are overtly against them and they hate it and they want to get as much negative attention against you. Hey, it's thoughts and prayers. Sorry, you are right. You are right, Elizabeth. It is thoughts and prayers and a lawsuit if they actually want to get shit done. Or legislation if they want to get shit done. I hope he files for Rule 11 sanctions. Ooh, I don't even know what those are. Is that for like wasting their time? I don't know if that's a thing, but I hope it is. I don't think he has any plans. I don't think Michael wants to fight this in court. I think he just wants to do his thing and go back to his life. And none of these people will let him. MAGA are the biggest snowflakes of all. They are white, cold, and if you get enough of them together, they shut down public schools. I like that. I have not heard that one yet. Well played. Thanks for becoming a member, Ben. I appreciate that. All right, should we go to a different story? I'm going to close 97 tabs here, and I will go to a different story here. Give me 1 second. God, my computer is so happy right now. I'm closing all these tabs. 1 second. Okay. Now, this story involves the city of Quincy, Massachusetts, which I have been told is pronounced Quincy. Sorry if I'm getting that one wrong. But in this town in Massachusetts, they are building a brand new public safety headquarters. And the cost of these headquarters that they are building, $175 million. And whatever, I think it's a lot. I don't know if you need to build anything that much, but whatever, not my responsibility to deal with this stuff. It's a $175 million building, and it's going to house their police headquarters. It's going to be their police headquarters for the city. And I think there are also going to be officials there for like ambulances, emergency medical services, and firefighters. So it's a big building. Lots of groups are going to be headquartered there. So, okay, that's why it costs so much. But recently, there was an update to the blueprint that was never presented to city council members when they approved the budget. And this is upsetting a lot of people, not just on the city council, but in the city, because apparently the mayor has decided that what this $175 million building needs are 2 giant Catholic statues out in front at a cost, wait for it, of nearly $1 million. It's from the Patriot Ledger. The pair of bronze statues will cost a combined $850,000 for 2 statues. What the hell are these statues? Well, according to the city, the 2 statues they want to build, they are going to be 10-foot tall bronze statues of Saint Michael the Archangel and Saint Florian. And those are the patron saints of police and firefighters in Catholic mythology. And I want to show you the picture. This is not a picture of what the final statues are going to be like, but this is like a version of what it'll be like. So this is Saint Michael the Archangel. And you can see in this version of the statue, we have wings, of course. We have a sword. And then what is this angel doing? Let's see. Stepping on the neck of a demon. I don't know if you could see, but that demon does have horns. So it's supposed to be the archangel stepping on the head/neck of a bad guy. So you have the good guy with the weapon stomping on the neck of the bad guy who is clearly unarmed. And I'm not sure that's really the image police want to give off right now. Hashtag George Floyd. But that's the first statue they intend to build. The other one is less intense, but this is St. Florian. And in this image, you could just see St. Florian's holding a little bucket and releasing water on something, a building, I assume. He's standing on a cloud. I'm not sure the water is going to make it down there, but okay. So these are the statues that they want to build out in front of the new police department / safety headquarters. And the thing about these statues, again, is that the city council never approved them. They approved a budget for the building, but the $850,000 statues, that was unilaterally approved by the mayor of the city. His name is Thomas Koch, and this is what he said when reporters asked about it. He said, the saints add interest and connect to the uses of the building. Koch, a devout Catholic, shocking, pointed out that St. Michael is a figure common to Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Neither statue carries strictly religious messages, Koch said, stressing instead their representation of bravery, courage, and service, values which he said Quincy's first responders exemplify. It seemed natural to do those images. Like, it's very convenient for this Catholic mayor to say, you know what everyone loves? My religion. And whatever it is, I believe. Like, these things serve, not only are they just this dude's beliefs that he's trying to waste $1 million on, he's trying to say, like, no, Muslims are cool with it too. Jews love these statues. Yeah, but they're Catholic statues. Like, you won't see Muslims say, let's build an homage to our prophets or anything, if you could do a visual representation of them. But there's no version of this where they would ever be okay with a non-Christian religion saying, let's put up a statue of our stuff, and everyone will be cool with it. It would never happen. That's a Christian privilege right there. And also, what's the point? Like, these are statues that belong in a church, if anywhere. They are not symbols of justice and safety meant for the public. They don't have a purpose. Like, if you need religious statues to improve and beautify a building that's already $175 million, you need to fire your designers. And also, even beyond that, what message do those statues send? The message is that if you are not a Catholic, you are not welcome in this community, right? You're second-class citizens. It's the worst possible message for public safety officials to send to the people who may actually need their help, because it's not welcoming, it's not inclusive, it's just plain dumb. Like, if you want to symbolize bravery and courage and service, and your first thought is, I have someone like that in my religion, don't argue that it's natural. Like, it's only natural if you live in a religious bubble. This is the equivalent of saying, we want to recognize peace in our community, so let's just put up a giant Christian cross in front of the building. Everyone's cool with that, right? Right? And by the way, that's not hypothetical. That's what they did in Maryland as part of a war memorial that the Supreme Court said was legal. But this is not what these statues are about. And they're moving ahead with these sculptures. Like, the mayor has already hired a sculptor to do this. It's not clear if there was any bidding process for it. He just let his buddy go forward with this. And one council member, this is what he said to the local newspaper. One council member, Dave McCarthy, is basically saying he's a fan of all this. Ward 1 councilor Dave McCarthy, whose district hosts the new headquarters, approved of the statues. He said he was informed of the plans a long time ago. The statues contain a great message and will bless our first responders. It might help them. They might say a little prayer before they go out on duty. And just as we mentioned in the previous story, if you're a firefighter or a cop and you need to pray before you do your job, you need better training. You should not have to pray before you do the thing that involves very serious life or death situations. And also, if you want to pray, go pray. No one's stopping you, but you don't need the statues to do it. Utterly idiotic. So I will say, not everyone is on board with this. This is a different council member named Dan Minton, and he posted this on Facebook last month, just saying he had no idea this was going on until he read about it in the newspaper. And this is what he says, and I'm not going to read all of this. There's a lot going on here. Look at the top here. Although this may provide spiritual comfort to some officers, religion aside, the image of the angel brandishing a sword or spear to the devil to ward off evil may not translate to contemporary times. He's thinking of George Floyd too. He also points out the Quincy Police Department has always had a solid reputation of compassion to all, often under unpredictable and stressful circumstances. The statue does not reflect this. And he adds, generally, people don't want to enter a police station. If you're entering a police station, it's because something bad has happened, ranging from an act of violence to a simple parking ticket. The statue may not be a welcoming presence to someone already ill at ease. And so what does he say? I'm not in favor of more statues. If there's one representative, if there is to be one representative of the police, get one of a police officer. welcoming the public. Let's go back to having photos in the station lobby of our police officers. This is the portrayal I want, making the public confident they'll get the service they need, not one of violence displayed by the statue of us versus them. I mean, he puts it very well. But he can't do anything about it because this isn't coming up for a vote. The mayor already did this. And the mayor actually said later on, like when they asked him, how did you just get away with saying yes to $1 million budget item for these statues? The mayor just said, blueprints evolve, budgets evolve. Like, yeah, it's very convenient. When it is possible that you might approve a budget for something, and then along the way you realize you may need more money than you budgeted for. That is very different than saying we budgeted a ton of money for this building. Oh, and you want to add your religious icons just for funsies at a cost of $850,000 in taxpayer money. Like, awful. So the ACLU has written to the city now saying, don't put up these statues. We're asking you nicely. Here is what they said about all this. First, the purpose of the statues is plainly religious. Although Mayor Koch has attempted to justify the statues as symbolizing the universal concept of good versus evil, saints are specific to certain sects of Christianity. They are neither ubiquitous nor secular. So what the hell are you doing? Right? Fair point. They did not say they are suing, but they just put it up there. What did the mayor say? What did the mayor's office say about all that? They said, we don't care about the ACLU. In a statement, the city says the mayor disagrees with the ACLU's characterization. As we've stated all along, the figures transcend religion and have a deep, long-held symbolic meaning of protection for our first responders. This is about them. And this is a commentator writing for the Boston Globe. Is it, though? It's one thing for a police officer to choose to carry around a medal that her faith says will offer divine protection. It's entirely another to erect two giant effigies outside a public building that will be used by people of all faiths or of no faith at all. Fair point. Right? That's from a Boston Globe columnist, Yvonne Abraham. So there was also an outcry when the city council held its next meeting. There was a petition online here calling for people to undo this. They want to stop the creation of two religious statues that has 1,633 verified signatures, which again, it's an online petition, doesn't mean much, but it's a thing. It shows there is backlash against this. They asked a city council member about this too, and it didn't help what he said. Here we go. Here's what Ian Kane, who is the president of the Quincy City Council, said. Look at this. I don't hear anybody talking about where there's plenty of religious imagery is in our public spaces, in our cemeteries. Yeah, because the city doesn't own the cemeteries. Someone then called out from the audience, that is so stupid. Thank you for coming, Kane said. Kane said the council learned of the statues when the Patriot Ledger reported it after someone anonymously tipped off the newspaper. And who is Kane mad at? The anonymous tipster. This wasn't meant to open up a discussion with the people who work in government, whether with the mayor's office or with the city council. This was someone trying to embarrass us, which I don't appreciate. They embarrassed you by telling people what you were doing. If that embarrasses you, that's on you. Like, how is this guy in charge of the city? Anyway, Mayor Koch has resisted every attempt to reverse course. He has repeatedly said he's not interested in people who oppose the statues. When a city councilor asked him what people who oppose the statues should do, he essentially told them to go pound sand. Wait for the beautiful public artwork to appear on these buildings and enjoy it with the rest of the public. The decision has been made. That's the mayor's chief of staff saying that. Like, it's a done deal. Well, if it's a done deal, guess what? There are other church-state groups that are now going against this. Americans United for Separation of Church and State has sent a letter to the city saying this is a bad idea. Don't do it. I'm not going to read all that, but that is what they are saying. They also pointed out that they are acting on behalf of 6 residents of the city who have a problem with the statues. And the reason you mention that is because if Americans United files a lawsuit against the city, you need people with standing, legal standing, and they have those people, which is interesting. They also point out that the statues are not legal because it's like putting up a nativity scene outside the courthouse. If you wanted to make it legal, you would have to put up displays of other religious and secular displays. You can't just put up Catholic statues, just like you can't put up the 10 Commandments in front of a courthouse by itself, right? Another group said, I'm sorry, I should point out FFRF also filed a letter with the city. This is their post about that. Freedom from Religion Foundation denounces mayor's plan to erect $850,000 religious statues at the police headquarters. And one of the things FFRF said in its letter is this is not okay. This is what the letter they sent says, and I wanted to share this with you too. Here, the statues are plainly religious in nature. Saint Florian was a Christian martyr who was canonized by Pope Lucius III. Saint Michael the Archangel is revered in the Catholic faith and plays a crucial role as a defender of faith, protector of souls, and a symbol of divine justice. Michael's role in other faiths does not negate the religious nature of his figure. On the contrary, it further emphasizes that the statue serves no secular purpose. Neither of these figures have any significance outside of religious contexts. So the question now is, what's going to happen? For now, the city is not budging. The mayor is not budging on this. Mayor Koch would rather promote his religion with taxpayer dollars than focus on issues that would keep the city safer. It is kind of ironic that a costly facility meant to improve public safety has now become better known for how it's going to exclude certain members of the community. And the message the mayor and some of the city council members are sending is very clear. Catholicism is the official religion of the city, and anyone who disagrees can shove it, which is a horrible thing for city officials to do. Can you just, $850,000, you know what you could do with that money? You could pay the salaries for a while of a few more police officers, if that was a thing you actually cared about. But they don't want to do that either. Okay, I'm going to stop there with that story. What other questions do we have before I move on? When we want cops to be self-aware, that's not what we meant. Is this referring to the statue of stomping on the neck of somebody? Yeah, not the greatest idea. There we go. Fits with standard police training. I don't know how no one who saw the statue or an image of what the statue would look like, no one said, maybe we should rethink this one. Thanks for that donation. The point is subtly to press their religion on other people and remind them of their place. The exclusion and cruelty is the point. That's what we're all saying, and the only people denying that are the mayor and the members of the city council who explicitly want these statues. Again, if any other religion in similar circumstances put up a non-Christian statue that was religious, you can imagine the same people would be flipping out over it. But because it's their religion, they think everyone's going to be fine with it. That's how delusional they are. You know, as a social worker, we always encounter budgetary issues, and this right here is a classic example of waste, fraud, and or abuse. Right? You should stick Doge on this place. It's not like they're doing anything useful right now. What do Catholics consider idolatry? I'm curious now. You know, in a good way or a bad way? Everything's an idol. Stained glass, the communion wafers, the statues of every saint, and then the new ones they create on a whim. Everything is an idol. Everything gets to be worshipped, and none of it does any good for the rest of us. Most non-Catholic Christians don't revere saints. What does the local Southern Baptist church think of this? Right? Like, where are the Christians speaking out against this stuff? It bugs me to no end when the only groups that speak out about this stuff are atheist groups or church-state separation groups. And like, I'm glad they're doing it, but where are the Christian groups saying, yeah, by the way, we don't want this either, and it's our religion? It would be helpful if they did it. We need the Satanic Temple to donate a free Baphomet statue to them. Not a bad idea. It is Massachusetts. Their headquarters are based there. Now they could just say no to it, but I feel like the Satanic Temple could make some headlines if they just said, we're willing to offer a Baphomet statue that would go up at no cost to the city, and it'll protect the cops and firefighters. How funny would that be? Someone make it happen. You don't even have to do it. You just have to say you're going to do it. We already got medical people refusing care to certain people based on religion. Suppose cops and fire departments decide no service to trans people or no service to atheists. Yeah, I mean, that's where all of this stuff is going right now. The federal government's very clearly saying, if you're not 100% on our side, we will destroy you, like they're doing with college campuses right now. They're doing it to trans people right now. And it would be very disturbing if the city decided to send, I don't know why the city's sending that same message, right? It's just a dumb, pointless thing to do, and they have no self-awareness to realize this is actually doing more harm than good. Anything else here? From the previous story, what question we got? Sanctions for frivolous, oh, that's what the chapter 11 or whatever, rule 11, sanctions for frivolous filings. Like, will the Catholic Archbishop get in trouble for filing a dumb lawsuit? And the answer is, I don't know if the Satanist group's leader has any plans to go after it. I think he's just laughing it off, to be honest with you. And I don't know if the courts consider that lawsuit frivolous like I do, but I think it's a fair point. You have no evidence of theft. You can't just go in court and accuse someone of theft of your imaginary things. Oh, thank you, Keith, for that donation. I really appreciate it. And all right, let me jump to another story here. 1 second. Oh, I got video on this one. All right, let me make sure I have this right. And get rid of the tabs. Okay. So one of the ways Christian nationalists have tried to get their religion into public schools, and we've seen this all over the country at this point, is they are trying to get religious chaplains into public schools. Sometimes they're just saying, hey, why don't you allow religious chaplains to work in your schools alongside the trained professionals, the counselors, the social workers? In some places, though, they're saying you could bring in these chaplains in lieu of trained social workers and counselors, and that's very disturbing. So anytime and Texas has done this, Florida has done this, allowing school districts to bring chaplains into their buildings. And now Arizona Republicans are trying to do the exact same thing. And there's a twist to this story that I want to share with you that's really disturbing. But basically, what's happening is that Senate Bill 1269, which is sponsored by a state senator named Wendy Rogers, who happens to be a white nationalist who perpetuates the Great Replacement theory, not a fan of immigrants. She's sponsoring this bill that would allow school districts to bring chaplains into their buildings as volunteers. Now, the bill that she wrote does have a few caveats in it. Parents have to give permission before their kids can meet with these chaplains. Parents would be given a list of which chaplains are at their school along with their religious affiliation, so you could pick your favorites like it's a menu item or something like that. And I feel like before I go on, I should tell you, if this is your first time hearing about this sort of thing, why is this a bad thing? Like, why would it be bad to have a very experienced chaplain in the building for whoever wants to see the chaplain? Well, in Arizona, where the chaplains would need some minimal qualifications, which is useful, it still sends the message that religious affiliations somehow outweigh professional credentials. Like a conservative Christian chaplain with years of experience may still not know how to deal with people who don't share his beliefs. And he could offer his solutions that impose his personal mythology on students, even if that's not what the evidence says will help them. Like trained social workers, trained counselors are taught to help all students. Religious chaplains are basically told to help their people. And that's what's disturbing. That's one of many things that's disturbing about this. That's actually what one lobbyist said to the lawmakers when they were debating this bill. This is from the Arizona Mirror. Gael Esposito, a lobbyist for the ACLU of Arizona, told committee members on Tuesday that school counselors are required to undergo specialized training to prepare them to help students, requirements that religious chaplains would not have to meet, even though they'd be providing similar services. They will simply not be equipped to support students dealing with serious matters like anxiety, depression, eating disorders, self-harm, suicidal ideation. Religious training is not a substitute for academic and professional training in counseling, healthcare, or mental health. Even with the best intentions, chaplains may provide inappropriate responses or interventions that could harm students. I mean, that's very well said. You can imagine how bad it would be if some kid was questioning their sexual identity or their gender identity, sexual orientation, or gender identity, and maybe their parents are like, there's something wrong with my kid. Hey, I want you to see the chaplain who's at your school. And this kid opens up to the chaplain, and the chaplain says, oh, you might be gay? Well, I'll tell you what, you don't have to be. And then tries to do some conversion therapy shit. Like, this could end very badly for a lot of people because these chaplains don't necessarily know what they are doing. I'm not even disparaging chaplains. Some of them are very, very good at what they do, but they're not qualified for this job just because they have the title. So that bill that was offered, that did pass in the state Senate. The vote was 17-12. So now it's in the state House. And at least when they were discussing this bill in the House Education Committee, there was some pushback. So, for example, one Democrat asked about church-state separation in all of this. And I'm going to play for you what that discussion was. And this is between a Democrat, State Representative Stephanie Simicek, and the Republican State Senator Wendy Rogers.
A simple question. To me, when I read through this bill, I just see unconstitutional. I see it as unconstitutional to invite religious leaders to engage in religious activities at school. And I would like to ask what happened to separation between church and state.
There's nowhere that's written. There should be a separation of church and state. For one, that's not in the Constitution. It's not in the Bill of Rights. So that's kind of a myth to base it on. And by the way, if I may add, it is constitutional, or it wouldn't have gone through rules at the Senate.
So what Wendy Rogers is saying there is that, don't worry, separation of church and state is not in the Constitution. Yeah, the phrase is not in the Constitution, but the concept very much is, and courts have repeatedly enforced that for decades and decades. So she's just flat out wrong about that. And then the dumbest thing she said came after that when she said, I mean, if this thing was illegal, the Republicans on the Rules Committee would never have approved it. Are you kidding me? You think Republicans give a shit about what the Constitution says? No, they will approve anything if it satisfies their extremist base. All right, let me show you another clip. There was a Republican state representative, David Marshall, who wanted to chime in to say, I like this bill. And he didn't even bother trying to make a secular argument for why he liked it. This is a short clip, but check out what he said.
Are there some good psychologists? I'm sure there are. But I think Jesus is a lot better than any psychologist. So for those reasons, I vote aye.
I think Jesus is a lot better than any psychologist. So let's get chaplains in the building and not actual trained professionals. Like, oh my God. So one Democrat pointed out that, you know, if you want to help students, you should get them better mental health support. And that requires more funding for trained professionals. The Education Committee's chairman, his name is Matt Gress, he said, you guys, we don't need to spend money on trained professionals because what these kids need is more Jesus. Here's what he said.
I can't tell you how much this committee and me personally, I've heard that there is a mental health crisis afflicting kids. Now, I don't necessarily think in many of these cases that something is medically wrong with kids. I think perhaps there is a spiritual deficit that needs to be addressed.
Spiritual. That what he says we need is more spirituality. There's a spiritual deficit, and we have to fix that. I mean, it's the same answer they give whenever there's a mass shooting. We don't need to do anything about the guns. Let's just get kids more Jesus. That'll fix the problem. Like, all of these Republicans would rather ignore what every expert says because they just like treating kids as target practice. Like, Christianity is the ammo and they want it in schools. And that bill did get through the House Education Committee on a 7-5 vote. So now we're waiting for the full Arizona House to vote on this bill. But the thing that really disturbed me, because right now this bill, as it was introduced, would merely allow school districts to have chaplains in the building if they wanted to. But I want you to see what Matt Gress proposed as an amendment. Check this out. There's a lot going on here, but this is what he offered. And look at the green text down here, because this is where it gets wild. This amendment was adopted. This is now what the House bill says, but check this out. The principal at each school may refuse to include any volunteer school chaplain on the list if the principal determines, one, actually, I'm going to jump to number 2. The principal can get rid of a volunteer chaplain if the principal determines that letting the volunteer school chaplain provide support services or programs to students will be contrary to the pedagogical interests of the school. What does that mean? If you're a principal and there is a humanist chaplain who volunteers to work at your school, or a satanic chaplain that volunteers to work at your school, and they meet all the other criteria, the principal can say, I don't think your values align with our school's values, so you're not allowed to be here. It's creating the opportunity for religious discrimination by the principal. And the other thing it says that I wanted to point out here, it said, oh, I'm sorry, I want to go back up here. Look at what the amendment also says. The new chaplains that are volunteers and would be at the school, they have to be, look at letter B. They have to demonstrate that the volunteer school chaplain is an official member in a local religious group. You have to be an official member in a local religious group. So if you're an atheist chaplain who doesn't belong to a congregation, you're out of luck. You're not allowed to do this. Maybe you're thinking, okay, but technically Satanist chaplains could still come in. They are part of a local religious group. Well, if you scroll down, look what this says. Local religious group, number 2. Local religious group means a religious group that meets at least one time per month within the boundary of the school. And let me jump to 3B. A religious group acknowledges the existence of and worships one or more supernatural entities that possess power over the natural world. You have to believe in some sort of higher power, or you are not allowed to be a chaplain in these schools. Like, the way this amendment is written, principals could kick out someone from volunteering if they just say, you don't mesh with our school properly for whatever reason. And the only chaplains who are allowed to do this at all in the state of Arizona would be ones who belong to a religious organization. So No Satanists because they don't believe in a higher power. No atheists because they don't belong to a religious group. It is religious discrimination by a different name. Even beyond that, that amendment also points out that chaplains have to have a graduate degree in either counseling or theology. And I actually like that you have to have a grad school degree in counseling. I'm not sure what a grad school degree in theology is going to do to help you as a counselor or a chaplain. They also say you also could just have 7 years of experience instead. So what if you don't have formal academic credentials, but you've been doing this a long time? That's okay. But think about what that means. The only people who can just be a chaplain with no credentials, you have to have a religious infrastructure in place to give you the opportunity to be a chaplain, which basically excludes minority religions in addition to the non-theistic ones. Unbelievable. So Gress also had in the amendment that you have to have 2 years of experience as a chaplain in a local religious group. Well, guess what? If you don't have a local religious group, or if you're part of a minority group that doesn't need a chaplain because they only have a handful of people in it, also out of luck. Like, all the amendments are designed to make sure only Christians are allowed to be on the list. Do you get what they're doing here? Because that's what this amendment is pushing for. It's so illegal. It's blatant discrimination. And by the way, this is not new because in Florida, the law says school districts may have volunteer chaplains. And then Ron DeSantis put out like a model policy that school boards could adopt. And that model policy had some of these rules on there. And Americans United for Separation of Church and State said, hey, this model policy is misguided and unconstitutional. And by the way, I made a video about this months ago, but there were school districts in Florida that decided, yeah, you know what? This is opening a can of worms. There's too many legal problems here. So we're just going to not do this. We're not going to have chaplains in our building. We'll stick to the people who actually know what they're doing. But in Arizona, this revised bill with the amendment that is currently in front of the Arizona House, it would discriminate against atheists, Satanists, humanists, and any other chaplain who is otherwise qualified but doesn't fit the description of what they want in a chaplain, which means it's a lawsuit waiting to happen. The Secular Communities for Arizona, it's a group in that state. They do excellent work. Diane Post is their legal director, and she testified about this bill. And one thing she noted online here, I just want to go to the bottom. Here we go. As a state representative, your duty is to support the Arizona and U.S. Constitution, both of which are godless and entirely secular, and to protect the rights of all citizens, regardless of their religious or non-religious beliefs. Your promotion of religion and Christianity as a false panacea is insulting and demeaning to reason, logic, and to religious and non-religious citizens. Beautifully put. So now, there's a couple questions. Is Arizona going to pass this bill? We'll see what the House does. I believe they have a slight Republican edge there. It'll go back to the Senate. Are they going to approve this now that it says no non-theists are allowed to join? Because that's opening the door to lawsuits. Arizona's governor is a Democrat, Katie Hobbs. I hope she's not planning on signing this even if it passes. But again, the fact that Republicans think they can get away with this is what's disturbing, right? This bill should never even have a chance of reaching her desk. But because Republicans have some power, it might. If you live in Arizona, please contact your state representatives and urge them to vote against this piece of legislation. It creates more problems than it solves. And if you're not sure how to start, again, go visit this group at the bottom, Secular Communities for Arizona, Secular AZ. They do good work. I'm sure they can point you in the right direction. All right, I'm going to stop there with this story. What other questions we got here? I fear kids getting conversion therapy getting pushed on them in schools by chaplains. Yeah, I mean, that is absolutely one of the concerns of letting Christian chaplains in the building. They are not trained to help everybody and to do it in like a neutral way based on best practices. Oh, thanks for that donation. As someone who was depressed suicidal as a teen in Florida, I cannot begin to explain how bad this is. Makes me physically ill. Do not want to think how they make life worse for special ed kid without supports. Yeah, and a lot of these schools don't even have the resources to have all the counselors and social workers that they need. The idea that volunteer chaplains are going to make up for what they aren't investing in, it's never going to happen. I can definitely see how this could be used to exclude mental health care professionals from the schools on the same kind of premise, given they don't believe they need them and use this excuse. Yeah, they're like, yeah, why do we need to bring in people who know what they're doing? We got volunteers to take care of it. That is where they want to go with this. And you could tell it's happening at the federal level too, with Donald Trump saying, let's dismantle the education department, turn it back to the states. Well, this is what the states are doing. It's not going to end well in a lot of places. Yeah, because everyone is welcome here is an opinion. Did you see the story this week about a teacher that had a poster on her wall that said something like that? Everyone is welcome here, and the school made her take it down because that's a political statement. I forgot. I think she pushed back against it, but just a lot of idiots in charge right now, a lot of places. This is going to be so hard on kids with parents who don't take mental health stuff seriously, don't believe in therapy. This is heartbreaking and upsetting. Yeah, could not agree more. There's a lot of parents who might think a chaplain is inherently automatically good, and they're going to want to send their kids to a religious chaplain, not realizing those people don't necessarily know what they're doing. There are no Southern Baptists in Massachusetts, otherwise they'd be screaming from the rooftops. That's for the last story, I think. But yes, the Catholics kind of dominate there. Real question, where do you get all these stories from? Oh, Ryan, thanks for asking that question. It's a mix of, I have a lot of news sources that I follow, and also people like you, people watching these videos, people who read my newsletter, they email me links to stories they see. I don't always respond to your emails, but I read all of them. And a lot of times they have local stories that maybe aren't getting the attention they need. Sometimes there are stories that are getting attention, but maybe they're not because they are coming from mainstream news outlets. They're being covered in a secular way, in a neutral way. And I am not neutral about this stuff. I have an opinion about this stuff. So maybe I think I can offer a better take on it. So that's where these stories are coming from. These are things I found interesting over the course of the week. And a lot of them come from all of you who are watching and who send me links using the contact information in the video description. All right, I'm going to jump to a different story. I figured you deserve a couple pieces of good news. So that's what these stories are about. Let me pull this up here. Okay. So in 1993, Congress passed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, RFRA, it's pronounced RFRA. And there were good intentions. Again, this is under a Democratic president. There were good reasons for passing RFRA. The legislation would protect religious freedom in the face of government intervention. Like, who would be against that, right? And the purpose of the law at the time was to make sure Jewish kids could wear yarmulkes in school if they wanted to, or that Muslim firefighters could keep their beards instead of having to shave them off if that was meaningful to them. And so, okay, fine. Now, that's obviously not what has happened with that law since then. And this is what Americans United for Separation of Church and State says about RFRA today. Since then, since 1993, RFRA has been used in ways that harm and deny the rights of others. At first, landlords who refused to rent apartments to unmarried couples on religious grounds sued to obtain exemptions from laws prohibiting housing discrimination. They said, it's my religion. You're impeding my religious freedom by making me rent to this cohabitating unmarried couple. And they said, RFRA protects my right to discriminate against them. Since then, individuals, religiously affiliated federal contractors, and even for-profit businesses have attempted to exploit RFRA to trump non-discrimination, health, and safety laws. The most well-known example is Hobby Lobby, a national craft store chain with tens of thousands of employees that used RFRA to refuse to provide its workers insurance coverage for contraception because they didn't want to follow Obamacare. And they said, well, it's our religion, so we shouldn't have to help our employees. And the Supreme Court said, yeah, that sounds about right. So that's the problem with RFRA today. It was supposed to protect religious people from being victims. And what has happened is that religious people are now using RFRA as a weapon against whatever group of people they don't like. So this well-intended law has become a weapon that hurts people. And the reason I bring that up is because recently a handful of members of Democrats in Congress have proposed a new law. They've reintroduced, actually, a piece of legislation called the Do No Harm Act. And let me share this with you here. This is what Democrats are doing. Whoops, let me get that back. What does it do? This bill amends the RFRA of 1993 to protect civil rights and otherwise prevent meaningful harm to third parties and for other purposes. And this is a very short bill, but basically it says we're just going to add an amendment to this Do No Harm Act. We're going to add an amendment to RFRA that basically says, I'm not going to read through all the legalese here. It's not fun to read, but I will take you to Americans United that summarized what this is about and what this Do No Harm Act would do. The Do No Harm Act will preserve RFRA's power to protect religious freedom, and that's good, while also clarifying that it may not be used to harm others. The Do No Harm Act will amend RFRA to ensure that it is not misused to undermine non-discrimination laws, like those landlords, to deny access to health care, like Hobby Lobby, to evade child labor laws, to thwart workplace protections like fair wage, equal pay laws, unions, to refuse to provide government-funded services, and to refuse to perform duties as a government employee. Basically, what this bill would do is say, yeah, we want to support religious freedom, but you can't use this law to override religious laws that are anti-discrimination laws and things like that. So this bill is being sponsored by a Representative Bobby Scott of Virginia, Jamie Raskin of Maryland, Steve Cohen of Tennessee, Mary Gay Scanlon of Pennsylvania, and Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey. They are the chief sponsors of this bill. And Representative Scott actually posted this on, let me share this with you here. When Representative Scott introduced this bill, he actually included a fact sheet about it. And look at what he wrote here. This is actually becoming an issue right now, he said, because the current Trump administration is poised to supercharge the misapplication of RFRA through executive actions. For instance, on February 27th, he issued an executive order titled The Establishment of the White House Faith Office, directing the White House Faith Office to support federal agencies in providing training and education on the availability of religious exemptions. His faith office is working on making sure government paid contractors know, hey, RFRA, if you have a religious belief that you're sincere about, RFRA can be used to ignore the following laws. Like Trump is literally designating this group of evangelicals to teach people how to use RFRA to avoid non-discrimination laws, right? So this should not be controversial. We should not want to use a law to override good laws that prevent discrimination. And yet, Christian nationalism is everywhere. Republicans will treat any criticism of their beliefs as religious oppression. And obviously, I know what you're all thinking. Democrats are proposing this bill. It's never going to pass. They don't have the numbers to pass it. Donald Trump's never going to sign this into law. And that is true. However, the reason I appreciate that they are doing this is because it points to the priorities of maybe a future Democratic-led Congress that is willing to pass meaningful bills that matter. And hey, we can dream one day. It also raises awareness of this issue because most people have no clue what RFRA is, how it's being used to hurt others, etc. So it also makes members of Congress take a stance on this bill if it gets through committees and everything. We want people saying they support this or they're against this, especially if constituents call their offices or get in contact with them. And I also appreciate that, this piece of legislation has been written. It is good to go. If Democrats ever get back into power, you can literally copy, paste this thing, and a new Congress could get it up and running if there were enough sensible people in Congress again. So I mentioned Americans United. They are cheering this on. This is what they said about this bill. This is from AU right here. Congress must stop Christian nationalists and their political allies from exploiting the 32-year-old RFRA to license discrimination against LGBTQ plus people, women, religious minorities, non-religious people, and other vulnerable communities. RFRA was intended to protect religious exercise, particularly for religious minorities. Originally supported by a broad coalition of unusual bedfellows, RFRA was never meant to be weaponized as a tool to circumvent non-discrimination protections and deny people access to healthcare, jobs, and government-funded services. The Do No Harm Act will preserve RFRA's original intent of protecting religious freedom while clarifying that it cannot be misused to deny people's basic civil rights. So we thank Representatives Scott, Raskin, Cohen, and Scanlon, and Senator Booker for sponsoring the Do No Harm Act. We urge, go away, pop-up. We urge Congress to quickly pass this critical bill to ensure that religious freedom remains a shield that protects all of us and is not misused as a sword to harm others. So right on. It's a nice wish. It assumes Congress actually wants to protect us and not use religion as a weapon. Obviously, right now, Republicans absolutely want to harm everybody using faith as a weapon. And they feel like they have a religious and political mandate to do it. But I like that Democrats are getting ready to push back if and when they ever get the power to pass good legislation again. All right, I'm going to pause there for this story. What other questions we have here? Landlords should be abolished. There's a better way for renting to be handled. Landlords are scalpers, but for housing. This is interesting. I don't disagree. I also don't feel like I know enough about this issue. And I'm not doubting anything you're saying here that there's a better way for it to be handled. I feel like I just have nothing to add to this because I don't know enough about that particular aspect of the issue. It's so surreal. Why wouldn't you want to approach and treat people where they're at? Yeah, why wouldn't you want to be a decent human being, especially if you're a member of Congress? Sounds like a very sensible thing to say. And then you realize the majority of Congress and half of voters are just in it for themselves and they don't give a shit about anyone else. And they're also dumb enough to think Trump wants to help them. I mean, at some point, there's a lot of people who just are their own worst enemies. Please say RFRA, Rut-Row in Scooby-Doo voice. RFRA, I can't do it. I can't do voices. I have one voice. I have one level. I'm very monotone. You know this. All right, I'm going to jump. Oh, do we have anything else? Say RFRA. No, stop it, everybody. I'm not doing it in a Scooby-Doo voice. How many of you said this? I think March 28th is the day to show support for that teacher. This is the teacher that put up the "Everyone is welcome here" with things like TikTok videos and such. Fantastic. I hope everyone does it. And I think I saw in the comments that teacher had put up the sign, "Everyone is welcome here." The school made her take it down. And then I think she put it back up and got even other teachers to put up signs like it as well. So it's wonderful to see that some people are not like Chuck Schumer level cowards. So good on them. Next up, criticize Christianity, be branded a terrorist. Yeah, that's the next law that this Republican government's going to want to pass, right? All right, let me get to one last story, which, again, I wanted to share some good news. And this, I feel, is good news right here. Give me 1 second. All right. Last thing I wanted to share with you is that the Congressional Free Thought Caucus, which is the caucus in DC, not a lobbying group. It's the caucus in DC for members of Congress who support atheists and oppose religious discrimination and all that stuff. They have been growing slowly but steadily, and they just got 2 new members. This is who they are right here. This is Representative on the left in the blue, that's Andrea Salinas from Oregon. And on the right, you have Emily Randall of Washington. And they are Salinas in blue. She is now in her 2nd term in Congress. And she was first elected in 2022. And if you're not familiar with her story, she only got elected because she beat in the Democratic primary a guy who was bankrolled by Sam Bankman-Fried, the crypto fraudster who's currently in jail. And look at this. Bankman-Fried, a resident of the Bahamas, upset the political order in Oregon last spring by spending $11.4 million to back this newcomer's bid in the state's new House district. But that investment failed when former state representative Andrea Salinas beat Flynn 37% to 19% in the Democratic primary, with all the votes going to everybody else. So Salinas beat that well-funded Democrat in the primary. She then beat the Republican in the general election, and she's now in Congress. This is her 2nd term. She began her political career in the office of Senator Harry Reid, who died a couple of years ago. She then worked for the late Representative Pete Stark, who was the first openly humanist member of Congress. And then she was in the Oregon House of Representatives before she decided to run for Congress herself. She was last term the freshman representative to the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. She has sponsored bills to increase mental health care in public schools and expand telehealth services in rural communities. So absolutely fantastic. And again, the reason I'm telling you this is because Salinas, the one in blue, she is now a member of the Congressional Free Thought Caucus, which is super exciting. I will tell you, she is religious. She is a Catholic. But again, that doesn't prevent her from supporting church-state separation and protecting freedom of religion for everyone, including the non-religious. What about this person in pink behind me here? That's Representative Emily Randall. This is her 1st term in Congress. And what was interesting about her is that she is one of the few members of Congress whose religion is officially listed as none. Has no organized religious affiliation. She is also the first openly queer Latina in Congress. And before entering Congress, she served in the Washington State Senate, winning by very narrow margins. But she decided to run for Congress after her predecessor retired after like 12 years. So these are the 2 new members of the Congressional Free Thought Caucus. And you could see this. There's a new website for the Free Thought Caucus right here. It's on Jared Huffman, the guy right here, congressman from California. It's on his website. And you could see about the Congressional Free Thought Caucus. What do they do? This is important because this is not an atheist group. Like, there is a Congressional Prayer Caucus that is super Christian, full of Republicans. They have a lot of power. This is not that. But this is also not like anti-prayer. Check this out. What do? They promote public policy formed on the basis of reason, science, and moral values. They protect secular government and uphold separation of church and state. They oppose discrimination against belief systems. No discrimination because of what you believe. And they want to champion freedom of thought and conscience. And they provide a forum to discuss moral frameworks, ethical values, and personal religious journeys. If you have a member of Congress, why the hell are they not part of this group? Because who's opposing any of that stuff? But the exciting thing here is, Jared Huffman is the co-founder of this. So is Jamie Raskin right up here of Maryland. And this group is now 24 members strong. You could see our 2 newbies right over there. But yeah, 24 members, and it's still getting bigger all the time. I will say that I said that Andrea Salinas worked for the office of Pete Stark, who was the first openly humanist member of Congress. Well, the late Pete Stark's son, Fish Stark, is now the executive director of the American Humanist Association. And I was like, hey, do you know this person? Because she worked for your dad's office for years. And he did. And this is what Fish Stark told me about her. Those who know her can tell you there are few members of Congress with her combination of heart, courage, and smarts. We are incredibly lucky to have her in the Congressional Free Thought Caucus as a champion for church-state separation, and grateful to all the grassroots activists at the American Humanist Association and beyond who let her know how important it was that she join. So fantastic thing. And again, why are we doing this? Because the hope is that as the membership for the Free Thought Caucus grows, it'll make the caucus more influential. And it'll help the stigma against atheism decrease. That's an important thing. I mean, keep in mind that the Congressional Prayer Caucus is much larger, has members of both parties. By that metric, the Free Thought Caucus has a long way to go, and it's only Democrats right now. But also, the more Democrats there are, the more powerful that caucus is and the bigger voice they have when it comes to legislation that concerns religious freedom and atheism and discrimination and things like that. For me, one of the most shocking things about the Free Thought Caucus is that there's very little media interest in it. Like, no one seems to care who the members are, which is all the more reason. And by the way, that's true even of right-wing media. You would think if someone says, I've joined the Congressional Free Thought Caucus, like right-wing propaganda outlets would be all up in arms trying to make people say, oh my God, this person's like a secret atheist, communist, or whatever. They don't care either, which is all the more reason for other Democrats to join this group. Why haven't more of them joined this group? They should. And we need this group more than ever right now during the second Trump administration. And the reason I feel so strongly about this is because there was a time not that long ago when being an atheist was probably one of the biggest taboos in national politics, but even being associated with atheists was a taboo. And now you have 24 members of Congress who are saying, I support the rights of atheists and non-religious people and church-state separation, and I want to be part of this group that openly does that, and I'm not afraid of that. That is an incredible step in the right direction, and it's, you know, a little island of joy in the midst of the entire world being on fire right now. So just wanted to share that with you. I was excited about it. What other questions we have? Otherwise, I think that's it for today. You mean people that believe in science and intelligence? That is awesome. Yeah, it's like a small fraction of the Democratic caucus, which is a small fraction of Congress right now. We got a long way to go, but it's a nice start. She's got a tattoo. Hopefully she doesn't get disappeared. Oh man, that is a morbid gallows humor joke. But yeah, it's kind of nice to see normal people make it into Congress, right? Gotta go. Thank you for that donation, Elizabeth. My dad wants me to watch car repair YouTube with him to bond. Thanks to me and Den for being awesome. And shout out to the chat for being equally as awesome. Thank you for joining us, Elizabeth. Always nice to have you. Yes, I just found this Friendly Atheist channel last week and absolutely loved this. Well, welcome to the show, Ben. Thank you for joining us. I propose that instead of being called nuns, which gets confusing, we be called Noras, no religious affiliation. Interesting. I should say, like, nuns is a term that some sociologists use. They also use unaffiliated or just no religious affiliation. It's kind of hard to I mean, this has been a long-term debate, discussion in the non-theistic community. What's the umbrella term for all of us? Because there is no one term that everyone can get on board with. Some people don't like atheist. It doesn't tell you what I do believe. A lot of people don't like humanist because how dare you tell me what to think about anything? I left religion because I didn't like that. So it is hard to find a term that works for everybody. So sociologists are like, these are the none of the aboves. It's clunky, but it's whatever. You get the point. There's no interest in it because it doesn't cause rage bait. Yeah, that's why this stuff doesn't get covered, because the Congressional Free Thought Caucus isn't out there picking fights with people. And maybe they should. Maybe they should be up in arms whenever there's Christian nationalism stuff happening, which is all the time. I should say some of these people like Jared Huffman do speak out on social media. But again, there are some members of Congress, they can yell from the rooftops and media won't cover them. But if AOC does a live stream, they will absolutely cover it. And thank goodness for that. She's very good at getting attention for the right reasons. But sometimes they do create rage bait, but some people don't take the bait. You know what I mean? Not much you can do about that, but we can share this with you. Atheists are still politically irrelevant. How dare you say that? So here's the thing. There is one open atheist in Congress, a couple people who are unaffiliated. But at the state level, we're talking dozens and dozens of openly non-theistic people at the state level in positions of power. That's not irrelevance. There was a time when you would not know if there were any non-theistic people in elected office. There are what's the count now? It's got to be like 60 or 70 at the state level or above. So it's not irrelevant. It is a minority compared to Christians, Catholics, Protestants, what have you. But it's not nothing. And it is, in fact, more. I mean, you will have more atheists in legislatures than you would other religious minorities. There are more atheists in office than trans legislators, and they get some attention as well. So it has to start somewhere. If you're going from it was always a taboo to now it seems like it's not, it'll take some time. But this is a good start. Oh, thank you for my Scooby snack. I earned it for doing my half-assed version of Riffra. Can't do the voice still. All right, anything else here? Oh, we got, I'm going to remove this right here. Do we have the last call stuff? Den, there we go. These are tweets that I may not have remembered, but Den's going to remind me of things I tweeted, and we will talk about those. So I don't know what's on board here. What do we got, Den? So this is responding to an article about how the National Institutes of Health officials have advised scientists to remove references to mRNA vaccines from their grant applications because the Trump administration wants to abandon that sort of research. And this person says scientists have just cured pancreatic cancer in some patients with personalized mRNA vaccines. Pancreatic cancer. And this Trump administration wants to throw it all away. They are throwing away a cure for cancer. Yeah, I mean, the Trump administration is getting rid of the grants that private industry will never fund because it's just research. It's basic research. It's stuff that may not make a lot of money for years to come. That's what the government is good at, funding that research. The mRNA vaccine is what we used during COVID to get vaccines quickly and effectively. And now they're like, that sounds like a conspiracy, so we're just not going to fund that stuff anymore. And it sets us back as a country for who knows how many years. I've already seen other countries say, hey, if you're an American scientist and you want to do research, come to our country. We will fund your research and we'll reap the benefits of it when you have something, if you have something. So we're about to see a massive American brain drain because Republicans are so anti-science that they're willing to throw away the work that was being done on very important issues. And again, I'm amazed that the quote-unquote pro-life crowd doesn't give a shit about any of this. It's appalling. But again, no one knows this stuff is happening. Republicans don't care that this is happening. They're actively egging this on because they're too afraid to say Trump is wrong about anything. But right now, this is what is happening. Reminds me that they're trying to put Trump derangement syndrome in the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual, whatever that stands for, DSM. Like they're just making up fake conditions because criticism of Trump is apparently a mental illness now, according to Republicans. And they don't know science, and they put non-scientists and anti-science conspiracy theorists in charge of science. Don't be surprised when we're not making scientific advancements that help everybody, because that's a thing the government does really well. And we're throwing all that away because Trump is too arrogant to give a shit. And Republicans don't have a spine for any of this. And voters didn't give a shit enough in the last election. It's infuriating. Oh, I love this. So Tim Walz has been hosting rallies in Republican districts. And part of me wonders, where the hell was this Tim Walz during the election campaign season? And I think the answer is the Democratic Party just kind of suppressed how often he was out there, dumb on their part. Let's play this clip.
To hear what people are irritated about. And I would argue that Democratic officials should hear the primal scream that's coming from America is do something, damn it. This is wrong. This is wrong. And independence. And there's nothing conservative about an unelected South African Nepo baby firing people at the VA. And for our Republican neighbors now, all of a sudden, they're like, I wanted my 401k to go down. I wanted this, This idea that you would be okay. Can you imagine if President Barack Obama had brought his unelected African friend to cut? You know what I mean? How they think to cut the government. This is wrong. And your member of Congress is there to be your voice, is there to push back.
I love Tim Walz. That's why I was so excited when he got picked as the vice presidential candidate. And every time I hear him, even now, when he's speaking on political shows, comedy shows, whatever, I will never for the life of me understand why people voted for J.D. Vance and Trump over a guy like this who actually gives a shit. He's amazing. And he's right. Whatever Elon Musk is trying to do, it's just a bad idea. It doesn't work. It would never have worked. It would never be acceptable if Democrats tried to do it, because everyone would just say, well, of course, this is wrong. But when Republicans do it, they just look the other way because they are all hypocrites. It's what the entire conservative movement is based on, hypocrisy. But I appreciate Tim Walz is speaking out against it. I appreciate Bernie and AOC are doing rallies. I appreciate every Democrat who's going to a red district because Republicans are too chicken shit to go talk to their own voters. And everyone should do that. Go to the rallies. It's a big deal. It's important that this happens. And maybe there can be a groundswell that breaks through the propaganda outlets and makes people realize what they voted for. Because most Americans are not good about this. They're very ignorant about politics, and they vote for whoever they think is going to shake up the system without realizing this isn't the part of the system you want to shake up.
To hear what people are.
All right, what's the next one? This picture just made me laugh. YouTube's play button doing the Lord's work. No more needs to be said. The picture says it all. Okay, yeah. I watched this interview in real time. Chris Hayes on MSNBC interviewed Chuck Schumer twice in 2 episodes about why he was voting to keep the government open and hand Republicans a victory. And what Chuck Schumer has been saying is that, of course, Donald Trump is bad, but if you shut the government down, what Trump is doing is going to be worse. And the thing is, his understanding of what would be worse is the stuff Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing right now. And if you're thinking strategically about this, Republicans have the majorities in the House and the Senate. It is their job to keep the government open. And if they can't do it, Democrats should not help them. They should go around the country and say, Republicans are too stupid to keep the government open, and look at all the chaos that's coming from it. Vote for us, and we will never let this happen. That's what they could be doing strategically. And instead, Schumer and a whole bunch of Democrats alongside him decided to keep the government open. And Chris Hayes understands why that's a problem. And this is what he asked Schumer about. And you could play the clip.
Look, Chuck and I disagreed as it relates to the approach and outcome.
I think
this is Chris Hayes played for Chuck Schumer a montage of what all the Democrats are saying about him after he caved. So that's what we're playing here.
There's a deep sense of outrage and betrayal. And this is not just about progressive Democrats. This is across the board, the entire party.
I still support Senator Schumer as leader, but I think the only way that we are going to be effective as a caucus is if we change our tactics.
I would have liked to see, when Chuck Schumer had leverage here, to say we need A, B, C, and D for the Democratic Party and force the Republicans to meet him halfway on those issues.
I myself don't give away anything for nothing. And I think that's what happened the other day.
They said,
yeah, Chuck Schumer is getting railed by his own party, getting criticized for basically handing Republicans a victory. Like, Democrats are very good at snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. But also, if you get rid of the video clip here, Dan, from the tweet, you could see what they were saying is that Chuck Schumer believes that Donald Trump is bad, yes, but it's not a constitutional crisis yet. And Republicans are, yeah, they say a lot of things, but they will come to their senses at some point. And I know he's been in politics forever. I don't know. I've been cognizant of politics and aware of what's happening for about 25 years. And at no point in those 25 years have Republicans ever been the party of sanity. They've always been the party of extreme crazy people, even if they had like a Mitt Romney or John McCain sometimes saying some sensible things. Overwhelmingly, it's the crazy people's party. So in what world, how dumb do you have to be to think at some point current Republicans are going to come to their senses and push back against Trump? You live in a delusional world if you think that's ever going to happen. And it's insane that the one guy who doesn't get this is the leader of the Democrats in the Senate. It is completely embarrassing. I don't know that AOC can get elected, but man, I wish she would run just to push all these people to the left. What else do we have here, Dan? Speaking of people who should be running for office, it is kind of amazing that Gavin Newsom, who could very well be that person who pushes back against Trump, he could spend the next 4 years pushing back against Trump, showing that if he were in charge, things would be so much better. He could be doing that. He's been doing that during the campaign. Like, he was fantastic as a surrogate for the Kamala Harris campaign. And what has Gavin Newsom been doing now? He's doing podcasts with right-wing crazy people where he doesn't push back on their propaganda and their lies and their bigotry. He just says, well, you have a good point there. You're very popular. You're very articulate about this. Like, what are you doing? It's the dumbest. I don't know who you're playing for, because the right wing hates you and the left wing is so disturbed by you that no one likes you right now. I think his approval rating has gone down too. And it's weird because Gavin Newsom is nothing if not a political animal. He wants to be in front of the camera. Meanwhile, J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, has been pushing back against Donald Trump and doesn't seem like a craven politician, just a guy trying to do the right thing. And I know he's a billionaire, but I'm telling you, as someone who lives in his state, he's been kind of amazing, relatively speaking, to other governors, most of whom are in jail or were in jail before Trump pardoned them. So I love this joke. If J.B. Pritzker promises to never start a podcast, he can lock down the nomination now. That's another one, though. I'm pretty sure he's going to run. And when he does, good. He'll be fantastic. Also, I kind of like that he's a billionaire going up against a billionaire. Like, if Democrats cannot be afraid of letting our rich guys outflank their wannabe rich guys. Oh, I have this in my calendar now. This week last week marked the 5-year anniversary of when Donald Trump issued a national day of prayer to deal with COVID. That was March 15th, 2020. And you'll never believe this, COVID didn't just go away after everyone prayed for it to get better. And thoughts and prayers. Thanks for nothing. The vaccine came well after that. Oh, this is an update on a story I did earlier. So I had done this story about John Raymond. He is from Louisiana. He had run a Christian school where there were allegations that he physically abused kids at that school. And for years now, this has been going through the courts. And then someone says something, and then there's an appeal, and yada, yada. Well, a couple months ago, he was finally found guilty of all the things. And I actually had on my calendar, like, he's going to be sentenced on this day. And I go look up the news that day, and they say it's been pushed back a couple weeks, and then pushed back another couple weeks. And recently, finally, he was sentenced to 2 years in prison. He's allowed to appeal. He doesn't have to go to prison just yet. But it is nice to see that this guy, this pastor, a former politician, a leader of the Republican Party in Louisiana, and by the way, a former Survivor contestant who was the first person voted out on what fans would tell you is the worst ever season of Survivor. This guy is finally going to jail for child cruelty. Thank goodness. And I hope it actually happens. I hope his appeals happen and he gets denied and he actually has to be punished for all the shit he did. Oh yeah, just look at this picture. Look at this picture. You have Paula White, who is the White House faith advisor on the right here. You have another faith advisor, Jenny Korn, and they're appearing on a show, on a podcast rather, with Matt Gaetz, the, alleged child predator / one-time attorney general pick, who was so embarrassing that even Republicans are like, we cannot do that. And all three of these people are discussing the importance of promoting faith and morality. It's like the worst guy for morality speaking to Donald Trump's Christian representatives about morality. And what's the chyron there? Trump administration puts God back in the White House, which you all know is a thing Matt Gaetz totally cares about. Again, what is the underlying basis that ties together the entire Republican Party? It's bullshit. It is hypocrisy. It's saying one thing and doing another. This picture is just a quintessential example of that. This is interesting. So there were stories going around about how, the Trump administration cut off U.S. Aid, the organization that helps people around the world with food, medication, things like that. They basically shut it down. And a court said you have to give them back their money and rehire the people you fired. And they're doing it, but not all the way. It's chaos. And the people who are getting hurt are the people we were helping in other countries, creating goodwill for the country in other parts of the world. And the amazing thing is, who's pushing back against this? It's a lot of Christian organizations who were getting money from the government to do things like administer medications and feed people. And by the way, that's not a church-state separation thing. Christian groups who are inspired by their faith to help others, they can apply for government grants to do that sort of thing. That is what they did. And they're the ones who are now saying, hey, we might have to shut down because we have to fire all these people. We can't pay them anymore. We don't have the food and medication. So look at the headline at the bottom. Trump's foreign aid demolition hits major Christian charities. And the person tweeting this, so sad to see this in a leopards eating people's faces party sort of way. I won't even make a joke about it. Like, it is sad to see because a lot of those Christian charities are not right-wing evangelical groups. A lot of them just happen to be Christian, but they're not the people who were supporting Donald Trump. They knew what the work they were doing requires a government willing to pay for it. But some of them absolutely are. And you have to wonder how much damage Trump has to do around the world before even white evangelicals recognize that he is hurting people. Because they live in a state of delusion where they think he's the new prophet. At what point do they decide to break with him? Because this is one example where they could totally do it. Donald Trump is hurting Christian charities. Is that going to be enough? Or are they going to be like, those charities had it coming. Screw the poor kids. I still love Trump. I'm sure that's what a lot of them are doing. But I do wonder when I see stories like this, what is it going to take for their fever to break? Because none of this has done it so far. They don't care enough about poor people. So I hope you all did your March Madness brackets. I did mine. And yesterday, the first day where they had like 16 games, I got 14 of them right, including some upsets. Today, I did not fare as well. So my perfect bracket lasted like a couple hours, and now it's gone. But I am beating my children in our brackets. So that counts for something, right? I can hold it over them forever. Who did I say is going to win the whole thing? I so don't take it seriously. I think I have Michigan State winning the whole thing. So I don't know, give it another day and they'll be out of the tournament, and then I won't have a bracket anymore. But it's one of those silly, fun things I just enjoyed doing, filling it out. All right, that's all I got there. Oh, what do we have here? This is a nice conversation I had with a podcast, the Faithful Politics podcast. We did an interview last week. It was really exciting, very fun, and a lot of questions that I don't get to talk about very often. So if you're interested, the YouTube URL is right there, and you could check out. We talked for like a good hour. It was a long podcast, so check it out. All right, I think that's it for today. Next week, I will be back on Thursday. And I think Den will be here then as well. I really appreciate any of you who are watching this and stuck through it this whole time. And as always, please consider subscribing to the newsletter. I was working on a story today that will probably go up Monday, but a wild story. I can't wait to talk to you about it later. And as always, you could support the channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. Have a wonderful, safe weekend, everybody, and I'll see you next week. Thank you to Den as well.